Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is January 27th. Late January has its own kind of quiet. Not the hush of fresh snow, more the steady, unshowy silence of things holding their shape. In the garden, this is a month of endurance. Roots working without applause, branches imperceptibly changing, and the outdoor world taking in the most minute shifts in light and temperature, preparing to awaken and grow. Today's stories carry that feeling forward. A composer who needed the country in order to write, a nurseryman who made abundance out of stripped ground, and a flower so strange it took science nearly 2 centuries to decide where it belonged. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1901 that Giuseppe Verdi died. Verdi is remembered for opera houses, for thunder and tenderness, for music that fills a room long after the last note is gone. But Verdi didn't live his life in velvet seats and gaslit foyers. He chose his beloved countryside. After success came early, he returned again and again to the land near his birthplace, Villa Sant'Agata, a working estate, not a retreat. There, Verdi became a farmer. He supervised orchards and fields. He planted trees, and he worried over weather and water. He wrote letters about crops with the same seriousness he brought to composition. He once said he did all his writing in the country, that there, somehow, everything arrived at once, and he was more contented. At the villa, Verdi woke at dawn and walked his land like a daily litany, checking fields, minding irrigation, lavishing attention on his horses. Some mornings, a small sailboat on the water. Then back to the piano, kept close in his bedroom, and back again to the garden. The rhythm interrupted only by black coffee and the occasional visitor in the evening. Someone once marveled that Verdi could practice agriculture and composition with equal intensity. Verdi's answer was simple. One restored him for the other. In his operas, nature is never decoration. It is moral ground. In La Traviata, the camellia becomes a fragile marker of time, cultivated beauty already beginning to fade. A bloom that must be red before it's gone. Forests shelter the outcast. Gardens suggest order that can collapse. Storms arrive without permission. And human lives unfold inside these landscapes, never above them. Verdi also moved through public life, civic roles, patriotism, and the complicated work of nationhood. But he never disowned his farming origins. He cherished them. And when he died in Milan, the city turned his private wish for simplicity into public grief. Crowds gathered, bulletins posted hourly, a procession that felt like the passing of a head of state. And today, in gardens, Verdi is remembered another way, in a tulip that bears his name. A Kaufmanniana tulip, sometimes called a water lily tulip. It opens wide in the sun and closes again at evening, as if keeping its own small hours. Low to the ground, early to bloom, yellow, lit with crimson markings, with foliage that can look lightly brushed or spotted. A compact flame of spring, arriving before the season thinks it's ready. And And it was on this day, in 1908, that Felix Gillet died in Nevada City, California. Felix arrived in America in the 1850s, French-born, sea-traveled, a man who began with a barbershop and ended with a nursery that helped shape the West. In 1871, he established Barren Hill Nursery, a name that admits what the land had become: barren, scraped down, unforgiving. The ground had been stripped to bedrock by hydraulic mining. No softness, no easy fertility. And still, Felix planted. He imported scion wood and young trees, walnuts, filberts, chestnuts, figs, prunes, and then he watched, tested, trialed. Neighbors were astonished by how he irrigated, water carried in bucket by bucket. Not romantic, just devoted. Felix's nursery stock traveled everywhere, into the Santa Clara Valley, into Oregon's Willamette Valley, into farms and homesteads that would feed generations. Felix's introductions and selections still echo through agriculture today, in walnuts and hazelnuts, in grapes and prunes, in orchards that keep bearing long after their planters are gone. Felix wrote constantly, too, catalogs filled with detail, questions answered, practical knowledge offered plainly, as if his work belonged to everyone. And in Nevada City, traces remain: street names, old stone gates, plaques, and fruit trees that are now over a century old, but still doing what they were planted to do. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear an excerpt from the poet Jean Kilby Rorison, who died on this day, January 27, 1941, in North Vancouver, British Columbia. Her family and friends called her Jenny. In her poem Flower Bells, she wrote, "Spring will bring her floral bells. She'll set them all ding-donging. The erythronium on the hills, the gaily dancing daffodils, the wild blue hyacinth that fills all English hearts with longing. Spring in my garden by the sea does not shilly-shally, for soon will come the blossoming time, the sweet of the year, the golden prime." This is the kind of verse January can bear, not because it's spring, but because it remembers, because it insists that the bell will ring again. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Cultivating Sacred Space, Gardening for the Soul by Elizabeth Murray, published in 1997. This is a quiet, unusual garden book. It's less about what to plant and more about what a garden can hold. Murray approaches the garden as a place for private meaning, a threshold, a sanctuary, a living room without walls, traditions that treat gardens as contemplative spaces, and to pilgrimage gardens like Giverny, where planting becomes atmosphere, and the moss gardens of Kyoto, where time feels slowed down on purpose. But the heart of the book is practical in its own way. It asks, what creates a sacred feeling in a space? Is it enclosure, a hedge, a wall, a stand of shrubs that makes a garden feel held? Is it a path, the gentle insistence of moving forward, even in a small yard? Is it a single object repeated with care, a bowl that catches the rain, a bench placed where light lands, a tree planted for someone who is gone? In late January, when planning begins to outpace planting, this book offers a different kind of design question. Not what will impress, but what will console, what will steady, what will remain meaningful, even when nothing is in bloom. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 2007 that the Albuquerque Journal ran a story about a plant that had spent nearly 2 centuries refusing to fit neatly anywhere in classification. The headline read, "Bizarro Plant Finds Spot on Family Tree." And the plant was Rafflesia. It's a flower without stems, without leaves, and without proper roots. Its bloom smells like something dead, like the equally impressive Titan arum, and it grows startlingly large. Since its discovery, Rafflesia baffled classification. It doesn't resemble its supposed relatives. It barely resembles a plant at all. And then, with DNA-based research, scientists finally placed it, not among the grand, showy families where the imagination might send it, but into an order with thousands of species, and most surprisingly, near lineages known for small flowers. It was the kind of result no one would have bet on. And that's the tenderness in it, somehow. Because even this oddity, this outsider flower, this rule breaker, still has a place in the family tree. Not because it is large or dramatic or extraordinary, but because it belongs. Nature doesn't require resemblance in order to offer kinship. Somewhere deep in the living world, there is room, even for the bizarro bloom. Late January reminds us that the work we repeat is often the work that lasts. Some things grow slowly. Some only show their value after we're gone. There is room in the garden for many ways of growing, even the ones that take time to be understood. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.